I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome to the Star Trek Picard After Show, Episode 7. So much to talk about, so many emotions, so many roller coasters, so much cake. I'm Christian Black, joined as usual by the one, the only, the new content every week himself, Flobo Boys!
Hey, what's going on? New content every week and finally our actual visit to the website. So glad to be here at the Picard After Show. Things are picking up finally. We're in space finally, and Deadly Cake finally.
That's true. Well, that cake was not well received. And back from Death's Door, the one, the only, the lovely Nikki Bailey.
I survived my cold, so I could be back here to talk about why anybody would waste vanilla icing on a perfectly good chocolate cake.
Oh, that is a great point.
Are you a lemon fan?
Oh, God, no.
Okay, fine.
Chocolate cake, chocolate icing, chocolate milk. I would have been on board for all that. And joining us for the first time on this particular panel, Rachel Goodman.
Hey everybody, I am very excited to be here. I am a huge Star Trek fan, especially TOS, but I am loving Picard and I can't wait to talk about it.
And I was saying to Flobo earlier, we're one James Maple away from having the Curb Your Enthusiasm after show panel because three of the four of us are on that show as well.
I've never seen that show.
If you want to check it out, just watch our after show Mondays at 3 Pacific. Just watch us. That's fine. All right. So much to digest. And as our guest is here, Rachel, I'll ask you first. Overall thoughts, about a minute or so. What did you think of this episode?
I loved the fact that we got a Deanna, Riker, and Picard reunion. This is probably my favorite episode of this season, just for that fact alone. And all the inside jokes and all the references. I was like, okay, I feel like I'm back in the 90s watching Next Generation again. It was amazing. I honestly would be very happy if we just kept this reunion going for the rest of the season.
Yeah, what about if they just hit out for the rest of the season?
Seriously.
And they'll be like, yeah, Rio still hasn't gotten in touch, so can we help make the pizza tomorrow night?
There's gardening to do. There's not like they wouldn't be useful.
But I'm so sad. Like, I want Data to be alive. He's my favorite ever.
Wow.
Well, next to Spock. Spock is my number 1. Data's my number 2. And I want Data to be not dead.
But both of them are dead. Nikki! What did you think of this episode? All the Spocks are dead. No, I guess Ethan Peck and Zachary Quinto are still out there. So
Yeah, there's an AU where they're alive.
They're somewhere. Anyway, Nikki, your thoughts on this episode?
I had all the warm fuzzies
I bet.
that warm fuzzy could get. I was sitting on the couch with my roommate who does not know anything about Star Trek, and it was just the crying and the excitement, and I wanted at least 2 episodes. Why couldn't we stay a little longer? I mean, come on.
I want to see more pizza scenes with them.
Me too.
Jonathan Frakes has to get back to directing. He can only do so much acting. Let me ask, if your roommate asks you this question, why are you crying just because she tilted her head?
Because that was Data's tilt.
I just felt like,
tilt.
yeah. And as much as I like that, I'm like, okay, this is the first time we've seen her do it. Would have been great if we'd seen it before.
No, because I had that same thought, but I was like, no, she's newly activated, so now she's perceiving the world differently, and therefore.
Well,
I agree with you completely. I think that
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
My thought is that we're seeing her act a little bit more, for lack of a better word, robotically, because she's
Ouch, that's their word. We don't get to throw that around, okay? You careful.
That's a slur.
I feel a kinship with Data and Spock, so I feel entitled to use this word.
All right.
Thanks for coming, Rachel Goodman.
Chad, let her know if she's allowed to use that word.
Taking my exit cue now. No, so I think that because she is just coming into all of this and just recognizing what she can do, and I feel like she's now downloading and processing a ton of new information, and so now she's going to start. I almost feel like she's going to start acting more robotically because of that.
Agreed.
It's a good point. I didn't think about that at the time because I was like, it was interesting that in this episode she was doing the more. What's the politically correct term of saying this now?
Synthetic.
The more synthetic.
She was behaving synthetically.
Yeah.
Synthetically, okay, sure. But yeah, I love your explanation of that. To me, the episode was cool, a little long in parts. I mean, it was 59 minutes this week's episode. Fat could have been trimmed, but For those of people who are a fan of nostalgia, you can't go wrong with having Riker and
So are
Troi.
you saying you wanted less gardening?
I did just a little bit more pizza. That pizza oven was legit.
That's true. Yeah,
That was
it's good to see that Riker does everything with the same level of attention to detail. It's like he's the captain of that pizza oven, and it just doesn't matter beyond that.
Stepping over it like a chair.
Yeah, I think that it was great. We knew from the original trailer for the show, we knew that we would see Riker at some point. I did like that we got Troi first. And especially if you were paying attention in the credits, they got the special appearance by Jonathan Frakes. Marina Sirtis, I think, got backseat later in the credits, the end credits. I don't think she was in the opening credits. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I missed her. I don't think she was up there. So I was glad that we got to see her, and I thought that it was nice to see her. Even as a mom, I don't know how long she's been out of Starfleet. She's still counseloring,
I found it a little bit hard to believe that they'd have a daughter that age. Now I know we're saying the actual actress is 15.
Yes.
So okay, but she looked younger to me, so I assumed this was
younger.
10.
She looked like 10, yeah. So I was like, okay. I mean, yes, I can believe this, but they feel. I mean, this is early 90s when Next Generation finished the show anyway. So I feel
it was
like
93,
yeah,
94.
Yeah, and even Picard was 50 back then.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that just to me, not that she's his age.
Well,
but,
I mean, they
why is that hard to
they
believe?
continue to tell stories through. I think 2002 was Nemesis. So
Yeah.
I mean, you have to go from that point.
Yeah.
but,
I mean, and then they had a little frisky night, and they made a new kid.
Make it so.
I think that they
Yeah.
didn't settle down for a while because they talked about their older son Thad grew
Yeah.
up in
Right.
Starfleet.
On ships.
So I feel like maybe this is their like planetary baby. Once they settle down, they're like, all right, now we'll have another kid because you don't want to raise two kids in space.
No,
I do understand your point, but I think a lot of consideration should be paid to the fact I think Picard's like 90 or something. People are definitely older in this show than the way we think of them. So you can easily have kids later in life, I would assume, in the 24th century.
Well, and I guess too, they even mention Ian at one point. For anyone who's not familiar with Ian, that was the child they had. Well, that Deanna had that did not last. They unfortunately passed away very quickly, but I appreciated that we had that mention, and I almost feel like now is their time to actually settle down and raise a family, so I appreciated that completely.
But even when he's settling down and he's domestic Riker, he's still got all the shields in place. He's always ready.
Shotgun.
Flobo,
Yeah.
that's what you want. You want to have the pizza oven out in the woods, but all the shields able to come down so that
That's what I'm
the
talking-
tall
it's-
share doesn't come after you.
It's the American dream, man. Whether you're a pool person or a pizza oven person, if someone comes out, if it's a coyote or something, you have everything light out in case something goes wrong. So I thought it was pretty cool, though, that he would instantly put the shields up. He was like, Picard, you're here? All right, it's getting ready.
Red alert right here.
Not even a, what's going on, man? Not even know what's going on. It's just a ride or die. It was
Well, and
amazing.
I like that there's also the secondary layer of shields.
Yeah, Romulus.
You want the no anti-cloaking
we
shield?
got that
Yeah,
too.
yeah. But
Sure.
don't worry, we got that. Yeah.
Like, what is
I
going on?
wonder if that's like a standard issue kind of thing. Like when you build a house, do you put a cloaking?
Well,
thing on there
I
as
got one of
well,
those with
like-
my Ring doorbell. I don't know if you guys have it, but I
True.
do. I, just
I never
wanna
read
make
the
sure.
manual, so
Yeah,
I
it's
don't-
probably probably there. So yeah, I think that the primary focus, I think, for this episode really was. It was really interesting to take a look at this from Soji's point of view. I think she had some great moments in this episode, from when she's talking to Troi, and like I mentioned, the counselor mode kicks in, and she's like, "You talking like this and being like this actually makes me trust you the least," And I think that I'm sure that obviously in all of her years as a counselor, Troi would have encountered that sort of reaction to it, but I think that she has this interesting point that it's like, whatever, is this even really real? And the idea that it might be a simulation, and the fact that Jean-Luc just kind of laughs it off. And I think that she did a great job of conveying that. What did you think, Nikki, about Soji's surroundings and not trusting anything?
I mean, it's understandable. I think that I felt a little, and this keeps happening for me in this series. Whenever Captain Picard does something that's not traditionally Picardish, it bothers me a little bit. So when he kind of like gave her that kind of like smart response. Well, of course I'm setting you up. I was like, he wouldn't say that.
I agree with
I was
this.
like, why would he? And
I
so
agree.
that took me out of it for a moment. But I did like that Deanna was able to sort of give us perspective. Like, in case you have forgotten, this chick has believed she's human until 20 minutes ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, that I agree with you. That actually really bothered me that he handled it that way. It didn't seem like him, and I had just rewatched some of the TNG episodes too. I went back and I watched the Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and Part 2.
But you can't stop at Part 1.
No,
That
of
would be
course
crazy.
not.
Gotta see 'em
And
both.
so just from even seeing him, even as a Borg, it was like, okay, no. Like, it just didn't feel like him in that moment.
If you'd given that line to Riker, I would have been like,
Yeah.
okay, sure. But it was not a particularly Jean-Luc, or as I like to call him, JL.
No, you are not allowed.
We're not allowed to say it anymore.
Frank's not here.
That's true.
When the whole panel's here, I won't use it. How about that?
I guess
Frank, come back, please.
I agree as well. I mean, granted, my experience with TNG is fairly recent. I mean, as recently as this year. A lot of things are inconsistent with this show and the other show, but it just seemed like, wow, what a jerk. Why would he even go forward and do that? Unless it was like, I was waiting for some kind of like lesson or like, I did it because of some kind of strategy thing. It's like, no, it was done to serve that scene. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess. It was fine.
And I thought it was great the fact that Troy's just also like, hey dummy, and she's able to talk to him.
Can I
like
say
that.
I love older Troy's voice? It's so soothing. Just reminds like if we do all my books on tape.
I
it's
mean,
great.
I
It's like a moment
I
thing.
always found younger Troy's voice soothing as well.
Yeah, okay.
So
Hey.
I'm just saying, like, but
Very
no, I
dope.
think it's great, and I liked seeing her in that role. I thought that that it was very important for her to do that, just as important for her to kind of talk some sense into Picard, and. There, like I was saying before, there's no reason for Soji to trust any of these people, but she can't even trust what she's seeing at this point. So she doesn't know really anything. And then the idea that she's in this beautiful, lush, the woods and eating a tomato for the first time. And,
Like an apple.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So
and as
go ahead.
someone who's not a huge fan of tomatoes, I was like, oh my God, don't do it.
And as someone from New Jersey, where tomatoes are kind of our thing,
Yeah.
I was like, yes, that's a good ass tomato. You could tell it looked like a good tomato. I want to put a little salt on it. Delicious.
That good attitude.
I mean, it was a good looking
It was a
tomato.
nice looking tomato.
Chat, let us know how you feel about Rachel's anti-tomato stance.
Chat is
Should we send her home now?
Could it have even been a cherry tomato? That might have been better.
Well, they're so small. She would have choked
She
on
doesn't
it.
like that.
I want to give a shout out to Star during the chat that says, after you said JL, that Christian you mean, which is exactly what we told you. Not allowed to say JL anymore on the show. And also,
Here's the thing, even Raffi doesn't say it anymore.
oh yeah, that's true. That's,
I think they got that note early on.
Yeah.
Not that there's fan feedback, but somebody was just like, she could stop saying that.
I
That'd
like
be
her.
all right.
She did say it though
Not
when
this
she was
week.
talking to. Now, mind you, I watched last week and this week
Yeah,
together,
she
so
did
I
say
might
it
be a
last
little
week for
confused.
sure.
Okay,
She definitely said it last
I will
week.
shut up.
the guy wearing the iPad speaking in French is definitely in JL. I'm just saying.
That dude was definitely
Yeah.
a JL, but that was now
Oh,
going
wrong.
back 3
That
weeks.
was that was definitely.
But I really enjoyed watching the interactions with. I almost called her Daj. Like, we barely know that character. Soji and Little Riker. What was the little girl's
Kestra.
name? Kestra.
Yeah, Kestra.
yeah.
And I really thought that. I think that sort of grounded her in a way, just sort of this childlike wonder, and just peppering her with the questions about Data. Do you like Sherlock Holmes? She's like, I mean, I guess. I thought that that was fun, but then also like, do you have mucus? So I thought that just sort of like that level of, it's like, yeah, so you are synthetic, but this little girl is just fascinated with you. I liked that. But I also felt they did a great job with the first time somebody refers to her as an android. It really kind of it really literally stops her. What do you think about that, Flobo?
It's actually, I'm glad you brought this up because it was one of those moments I had to watch twice. Because the first time the scene happened, my brain went on its own little trips, right, with no drugs needed, about really the difference between an android and a human being, right? We're the soft machine. I mean, we're real people, but we're like tendons and ligaments and a soul and reasoning, and other side you have machines, and that's way more advanced or more simple as you make it. Like, what is the delineation? How human is human? And I was like, wow, this is a kind of a cool way that they're actually doing it through the eyes of a child and saying, hey, you got saliva mucus, bro. I don't know. That was pretty cool.
Well, and you have a really good point because even though they're saying that she was synthetically created, she seems just as human in her mannerisms, the way she looks. She's organic. It just does not feel like we're even dealing with a robot. We're dealing with a real person. And so I think the hardest part for me, it wasn't so much that watching her, it was hard to watch her deal with this because I can only imagine, waking up and realizing, oh, hey, I'm actually not real. Like I
hey,
felt
I'm 3.
Yes, exactly. But the worst part for me was the fact that she has all of these she wasn't just synthetically created, she has synthetic memories. Yeah. That to me is the hardest part of what she has to deal with. Right. Is, oh, my mother and father, they're not real. This life that I thought I had wasn't real. Oh, and P.S., the one thing that was real, my twin sister, she's not here anymore.
And how lonely that must be. Yeah, that was my thought
That's
too.
what I was going to bring up. Yeah. The idea that, in almost the same breath, Picard's like, no. Soji, don't worry. Daj was real. Oh, but she's not alive anymore. So it's like, oh my God, I'm so excited. And that's a total bummer.
I wanted to say about Kestra, what I loved, I felt like they gave us sort of some of the best qualities of all of our favorite Next Generation characters in that little girl. So she had the ability to ask complex questions, but and also be curious in a way that was really childlike. But then she was also super sweet, and she understood some of the she had that sort of adventurous spirit and good with making up languages and all that stuff. So I just felt like it was like, oh my gosh, like she, even if she never met Data, she's got some Data in her, and she's, and you can tell she's got, Deanna's like comforting thing, and she's commanding in the way that Riker was. And I was like, oh my God, it's so cute. She's like a little kid of the family.
And she's got the hair of Tasha Yar for some reason.
And she's an Enterprise fangirl, and I was here for it because that's why I love this episode so much, was all the references and all, like, not only did she know about Data, she knew about the Enterprise, she knew about all of these people.
She knew that Jean-Luc Picard is the greatest Starfleet captain of all time, according to Will Riker. And I know you have a different thought on that. But the only reason why I felt, we were saying this right before we started, I feel like that moment is a little bit disingenuous because to me, the Will Riker I know, he would say the greatest Starfleet captain of all time was Will Riker. Yeah, but you feel differently.
I call foul on that statement because I would say either Kirk or anytime Spock has taken over as captain.
Ooh. I kind of wouldn't know that.
But Riker wouldn't know that.
No,
he would have just read files. And,
I know. Yeah, I just personally was like, nope, I don't agree.
No
offense.
I'm all Team Picard. Anyway, so.
I like Picard, but
I like Riker.
Christopher Curry says Kesha was the name of Troy's older sister that died drowning, but I wonder if she had any empathetic powers. So you were saying a little bit. She has a little bit of that, being to perceive Soji's shortcomings or situation, but does she?
I think that's a great question. I would assume that is it Kestra? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I get it right. I would assume she's half Betazoid,
she's
so
quarter now.
She's quarter
Betazoid.
Oh, right, because Deanna was half. So I feel like that would probably mean that maybe she's very empathetic and she can sense things, but I don't think she can read emotions, and I don't think she has the actual abilities that Troi has.
Though, I have to say, another opportunity here where I would love to hear this story too. I mean, we've said that every time something interesting's happened, we've been like, oh, I want to go down that road. I would like to see what their life is like on Nepenthe. Is that how you said it? Nepenthe?
Yeah. Nepenthe, I think.
Yeah, I would like to hear more about that and see more about that. And I want, so write a book, guys.
Or it could be Riker.
Is that in one of the books? No.
I don't. No, I don't think that's one of the books that are tied in. But I know that a friend who watches this show, not live, Mr. Mark Hunt, he knows everything about all the books. So let us know in the comments, and we can read that into the official record next week. Talking about their life and getting to know more about them. I thought that it was a really nice touch, and of course heartbreaking to hear about their son Thad. When early on you find out, okay, so they had a child who passed away, and then when you find out that he had this rare condition, and it could have been cured, but because you weren't allowed to do any synthetic research anymore, he ended up dying. And I just thought that was like, well, that's just such a, it was just such a poignant moment. That's not where I was expecting it to go.
Yeah, me neither.
So I thought that was handled really well. What did you think, Rachel?
Yeah, just the way that they go about explaining this, and the whole entire season, the theme of 1, Romulans are bad, and 2,
I mean, we knew that.
And 2, synthetic beings bad. So I just think that it was a very poignant way of pulling that along and keeping us with that same thread of what this season's really all about, what the story's about. And just the more that I learned about this family, the more, like, seeing Riker and Deanna as a family unit retired from Starfleet, it just really made me feel for them.
And look, he's still an active reserve, so Riker spinoff, I'm ready for it.
I'm saying that too. I actually agree with it because it's very easy to say, oh, the thing on Mars, and it has this giant, warscape, but it's really the personal stories in between those families being broken up or being affected by the ancillaries of war. And I think I'm glad they took this time through the Rikers to say it, because now you have the nostalgia hook, and then you also know that it's affecting people as well. But the chat's with you guys. They want to spin off with the Rikers.
Well, let's talk about
Riker Troy's. I'm sure she wouldn't have just taken his last name.
Riker Troi it is.
Yeah, I think her mother wouldn't have stood for that.
No, she would not have just taken it.
Yeah. Let's, speaking of characters that ought to be spin-off, let's talk about a character that nobody wants spin-off. Agnes. Or Raffi, by the way.
Raffi's amazing.
No, Raffi does not need her own
like
show.
Raffi.
But this week, Raffi was not the most annoying character. That did indeed go to Agnes this week.
Yeah.
And at least we got to see, when she kills Maddox, she references that if you could have seen what they showed me. So we see that Commandant O does or is she Commodore? Commodore. I'm thinking of the Police Academy movies. Commodore O does a mind meld, and I found that to be interesting. But I didn't think that the mind meld really worked that way, where it's like, here's some stuff that I think is going to happen. It's more like you can experience these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions. It's like the way to just very quickly look, from a storytelling standpoint, it's a very quick plot device for just this way you know everything. But I don't think I've ever seen a mind meld work that way. And I also have to say, I had a lot of problems with it working that way.
Only when the character was from the future and they were doing a mind meld.
Yeah.
Then, but in this case,
but this is stuff that didn't happen.
Yeah.
This is stuff that she thinks will happen.
Right, and I'm like, so what? Now they know the future, and then the other thing with that was the actual flashes that we saw anyway. I didn't understand how it led her to how it led Agnes to that conclusion so quickly. I just was like, wait, did I miss something? It didn't give me enough information for me to have made a decision about, now I'm going to go kill my lover. It just didn't give me enough for that.
Yeah, I didn't even realize until you mentioned it. Yeah, all the mind melds I've seen are definitely in the moment. None of that future thing's kind of...
Yeah, now, if somehow they're going to tell us in a future episode that the Commodore is from the future and did actually experience these things, it's fine. I don't think that's likely. I think that they have rewritten some rules with this show, and this was one that actually bothered me. But it did explain her frame of mind, and it's like, well, if she saw it and she experienced it, the fact that she threw up didn't mean anything, because clearly anything's going to make her throw up, you know? But I think the fact that she experienced it, we can at least, from, the way that they're telling us the story, okay, logically, this is what got her to that place. So even if we disagree with it, Nikki, what do you think about Agnes's state of mind once we've had this little fact revealed to us?
I have to say, I thought she was gonna throw herself out of an airlock. She
was looking out into space.
Yeah, I was like, and then I had all these thoughts like, well, that
Take
thing that,
Rafi with you.
that-
Bobo, don't say that.
I would never say
That's such an
that.
awful thing to say. Sorry,
Oh
go
my
ahead, Nikki.
gosh.
Just as Rafi.
And then I was like, okay, she chewed that thing, which is tracking her. So, right, it's all in her
Yeah.
body. She can't throw it up. She can't remove
I
it.
think it was Pop Rocks. Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Because she drank a Coke.
So then I was like, and I said this to the screen out loud, like, she doesn't know, like, if will her dying stop the tracking? I don't know. I would have thrown myself out of an airlock. That's what I'm sorry because she was my favorite character when this season started. I wanted her to
She
die at that
was?
point.
Yeah,
I
she
was like,
was?
I needed her to die now.
More than Jean-Luc?
I'm
Obviously, aside
More
from
than
Jean-Luc,
number one?
aside from
Number one.
Jean-Luc, Agnes Girardi was my favorite because she was hilarious and weird, and I like hilarious and weird. I just wanted, but by the time we got to this episode and what she had done, I was like, yeah, she needs to die now.
It's time for her to go out the airlock.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Go
play
ahead,
the devil's advocate. While I
You are.
completely understand that point of view, the way that I read her, she was also my favorite from the start just because she was quirky and weird and different. And it's like, okay, yeah, like I connected to her. I was like, wow, this is an awesome character. As we started to see, obviously her making the choice to kill Maddox and just having this tracker in her without telling anybody what's going on. If it weren't for the fact that she's playing it like she feels really guilty about it, and you can see how she's torn because of what she thinks she knows is going to happen. So I think that in her way, she thought she was doing the right thing because of the future or because of how it was shown to her. So I actually don't think, I personally don't want her to die. I want to see a redemption. I still think she can be redeemed.
And the
That's
only
so
way she
nice
can
for
redeem
you.
herself is to
I'm-
throw herself out the airlock.
That does
But
help.
yes,
what?
that would be
Rachel-
some great redemption.
Rachel has persuaded me. I need to extend a little more
Yeah.
compassion to Agnes. Thank you.
I don't think she's beyond
She may be
redemption.
She
able
I
could
had
get
this-
Jean-Luc killed.
I had this mental
So,
image of
keep that in
you're
mind.
right. You're right.
She's
right.
yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Like you said, Nikki, that you would throw yourself out the airlock. You would never have done anything where you could possibly jeopardize or sell out Jean-Luc.
That is true.
You
Yeah,
wouldn't do that
that
to
is
him.
true.
But
go
here's
ahead.
the other thing. Now, me as the viewer, of course, I would not do that too. I'd
Yeah.
be like, okay, I'm not eating this tracking device. But from her perspective, she doesn't really know Picard that well.
Very true.
So it's kind of like this whole trust issue. How does she know that she should trust Picard over what she thinks she's seen? Now, killing Maddox, someone
That
she
was
clearly
rough.
loved, I'm like, how did she do that?
And she has not handled it
man.
well since she did it. She
Yeah.
was
I mean,
determined to
eating
do
bad
it.
cake and everything. Like what?
There's no bad cake. No bad cake at all. No,
Well, chocolate cake with
vanilla icing.
is,
That's
yeah.
just an insult to
Yeah.
chocolate cake.
But I didn't enjoy seeing her throw up the red velvet. What were you
I
gonna
was
say?
on Team Airlock. I just had this mental image of her flying
Let us know in the
through
chat.
space
Were you Team Airlock?
with the Picard theme playing, just being fallen in space. Taking a step back, I didn't think that a part of her personally redeeming herself, but more Picard saying, "Hey, look, this quest is impacting so many other people's lives." So almost like a device to move that guilt forward. But now that you're saying it, well, I'm okay. I'm open to a redemption angle. It's fine. I thought it was kind of weird that Rios was like, "I think it's Raffi." You're like, really?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you, Flobo,
Yeah.
about that. Did you get the sense, because when I was watching it initially, I thought that Rios figured out Agnes had some kind of tracker on her and
Right.
probably knew she had it, but he was going to put it this way of like, yeah, I don't know, I think we got to get rid of Raffi to see if it would cause her to volunteer the information like, no, it's me. But then as it played out, I'm like, no, I think he really
He
thinks that
legit
Raffi,
thought it
right?
was
Is that,
Agnes.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
Raffi's acting different, and he's attracted to Agnes, so he's not,
But that's what I'm saying, bro. Look, she kills Maddox, and it's supposed to be a sad day, and they do the whole kiss, kiss, bang, bang, and now she's all acting weird. He's like, "It's Raffi, I swear to you."
No, but no one. Okay, from the way that I took it, nobody knew the actual connection between her and Maddox. Like they knew that they were close, but did anyone know that they were that close?
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that she's the last person to see him alive. She's distraught, and then they still had a relationship, or that
Yeah.
tryst or whatever. And I would be like, "Hey, she's going through some stuff," not like.
that's because you're a gentleman.
Probably. Thank you so much.
And a scholar. by the way. Yeah, and I think that it was interesting. Do you think, just sort of a quick yes or no, because we're running along, did anyone on the panel think that she did expect to have killed herself, or did she know she would go in a coma? Just quickly because we only have a little.
I think she thought she was killing herself.
Me too.
Yeah,
I did too.
Me
Yeah,
too.
and so I think the fact that she's in a coma is one of those. So I guess that does show us that the tracker isn't going to work if
she's unconscious.
So does it not work if she's sleeping? I don't know, but either way, it didn't work. And
Or maybe whatever she injected herself with neutralized whatever the tracker was, but then she didn't know what she had eaten, so that theory doesn't work. Never mind. Thank you.
yeah,
And also, I mean, the way that I took it, it looked like I know it wasn't cyanide. It looked like she had taken a cyanide
Right.
pill. The way
With
that she
the
was,
foaming.
yeah, exactly. So that's what I figured that she knew. And she's a doctor. I'm pretty sure that she expected no one was going to find her and that she would just
Right.
die.
except of course the emergency medical hologram, which I guess doesn't have the memory of like, hey, didn't I see you kill that dude?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I was a little
There's
confused by
been no
that.
callback to that. So in our final minutes, we do have to talk about some of the other developments in the episode, which is back on the Borg cube. We see Elmore is just the samurai, the Romulan samurai we didn't know we needed, and he took out was it 4 dudes with phasers? I mean,
Yeah.
it was just like, oh, you and your guns, hang on, I'll be right back, and then boom, their head gets cut off. So I thought that it was interesting to watch that play out. Obviously, the Romulans don't feel well about what just happened, so they're pissed. But I also think that it makes sense that look, they kill all the other what he referred to as the XPs, all the other former Borg. So the idea that Hugh's just like, yeah, we're just gonna take this away from you, because you clearly don't deserve this. Look what you did. And I thought that was great and that was interesting. And I did not expect to see Hugh get killed in this episode. I was very upset by that, Nikki.
I actually did expect it. I don't know why. I just was like, he's Hugh, cute little Hugh from back in the day. He can't. They're gonna kill him. I just felt like they would,
Wow.
and
Me too.
I don't know why. And it was like, we didn't spend a lot of time with Hugh back then or this time, but still, it was emotional. Like I had a little tear.
I figured, okay, so two episodes ago, I did not think he was going to die. This episode, I was like, yeah, he's done.
Well, they killed everybody else.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was. I
figured Eldar would survive.
Yeah, she was just like, well, I'd kill you too, but you're Starfleet because what did she call the treaty?
treaty?
I forget it. I had written it down, but it's not
Asinine
worth.
treaty?
Yeah, it was asinine treaty.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that those sequences were interesting. And still very upsetting though. Whether we expected it or not, I was like, man, Hugh's just a good guy. He's trying to do good. He's one of only a few people on the show that's trying to do good things.
Kill them all.
It also gives all the XBs now a martyr for their cause. And so, the revolution that Hugh wanted to start toward the end there, they now have that, they have their own Che,
Yeah,
to,
absolutely agree.
Michael Che? And then we see...
A little bit different.
Is it really? But then we see that Elmore's like, yeah, I'm going to need to call in the big guns. So we see him hit the little SOS. So to be continued on that front. So that should be interesting to see next week. But I have long expected that the Borg cube was not going to go well for the Romulans. Basically, from the time it was introduced, I'm just like, the thing is just filled with Borg. You really think that this is a great idea? Let's just hang around in here, So it'll be interesting to see how that works.
And what about the guy who recognized Locutus and was like, Locutus! Hey,
Yeah.
brother!
That was great. I love that. So one thing that we ought to do now is our engaging moment. So it is a segment that is called Engage. And our engaging moment, Flip, I'll have you go
I was
first.
waiting for that drop.
That's all right. Just go ahead.
So for me, it was definitely the scene when Deanna Troi says, "I'm not as brave as I used to be." Oh, there it is. And Picard goes and says, "You're getting wise." But that was pretty cool.
That was nice.
I'm getting there my age myself. I could totally relate with that.
And for Nikki,
My favorite moment was Captain Picard holding the baby, and the baby was just a little Skrunkle bunny, and they were both a little smiling. It was so cute.
Hey, look who
That was engaging.
And the baby had more hair than Jean-Luc.
Yes.
That was
That was
adorable.
even that.
I 100% agree with that. Rachel?
The moment when Soji tilted her head because of the callback to Data,
Yeah.
I was like, yep, I love this.
And I did like when Kestra?
Yeah, Kestra.
Sorry, I should really write these things down. Kestra basically is trying to encourage Soji at the end of the episode that you could have Picard and he could have you. You could both have each other. I thought that that's nice. It's just like, look, I know you might not believe it right now, but he is really a good guy. You should trust him. And I think that was I think it was just a very sweet sentiment. Before we wrap up, from a friend and also huge Picard fan, I wanted to point this out, that this is in regards to last week's episode from Mr. David Weiss points out that last week's episode stole 2 plot points. The walking around in the pattern thing and the Romulans having 2 names. Those are both stolen from something called the Amber series by Roger Zelazny, and Earthsea is also another book by Ursula. I can't read the last name.
Le Guin?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just there was a typo in the text, but you got it. So those 2 things came from that, and I'm like, well, that's actually those 2 different books. So I thought that was interesting. That it was something that I wasn't familiar with. So I like to call out these things. So a little creative license, a little bit of borrowing. I don't know. As an author, how do you feel about that, Rachel?
Oh, I mean, honestly, when they get the IP, then
Yeah.
I'm happy with anything they do.
They probably didn't buy it though. Do you think? Or
You would have to if it got published.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Otherwise, you can get sued. So.
yeah, no, all right. So everybody wins.
yeah.
So get sued.
All right, so we are out of time for this week. We only have 3 episodes left, but we will be back next Thursday at 9 Pacific, right here on AfterBuzz TV. Until then, Rachel, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Rach Goodman or on many other AfterBuzz shows, including Curb Your Enthusiasm.
With us!
With you
Happy
guys!
New Year!
Outlander, Retro Anatomy of a Movie with Christian.
Oh my gosh, I'm on that too.
Yeah, you are. Narcos Mexico Season 2, and sometimes The Young and the Restless.
Wow.
She
Nikki.
is
And
busy.
Stumptown.
Oh my goodness. Nikki Bailey, you can find me at Nikki Bailey _ on all the social medias. That's it. Cool.
That works. Also, the Kirby Enthusiasm panel with these fine people here. My name is Flobo Boys. You can follow me on Twitter at Flobo Boys, on Instagram at Flopito, and of course, Flopito.com. New content every week.
#1 New York Dragons fan.
New
That's
York
a-
Guardians!
Whatever.
Seattle Dragons are a different team.
I can't believe there's actually a team called
You
the
mean
Dragons.
not the Jets?
No. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ, and on many of the shows that were just mentioned, but also Thursdays over on the Popcorn Talk at 1 p.m. Pacific for Marvel movie news. That is all the time we have for this week. Until then, live long and prosper.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.